On April 1st, 2023, a can of beer appeared in a 60-second Instagram video. It wasn't a commercial, it never aired on television, most of the country never saw it. But within 6 weeks, roughly $30 billion in market value had evaporated. And the best-selling beer in America, a crown it had held for more than 2 decades, lost its throne to a Mexican import, and it's never won it back. The story everyone knows is that one influencer video destroyed an American icon overnight. The story almost nobody knows is that the collapse actually began 15 years earlier in a boardroom, not on social media. The decisions that broke America's favorite beer weren't made by activists, they were made by executives, and one man who watched it happen from inside the company, a president at Anheuser-Busch, finally wrote down exactly how it went wrong. The book is called The Last Call for Bud Light by Anson Frericks, The Fall and Future of America's Favorite Beer. And this is focused around Budweiser, the famous company Anheuser-Busch. It's been renamed several times, which we'll cover here shortly. But ever since the controversial video with the transgender activist Dylan Mulvaney, the beer company Budweiser, Bud Light, all of it took a huge hit. And that's the story of this book. And this is from someone who worked inside the company. Found it very interesting how much detail was given in this book, and it's not what I expected. This ended up being a much better book than I thought that it was going to be. So let's get into it here and talk a little bit more about the company. To understand what was lost in 2023, you have to understand what was built, because Anheuser-Busch didn't begin as an empire. It began as a failure. In 1860, a St. Louis soap and candle manufacturer named Eberhard Anheuser took over a struggling neighborhood brewery that had owed him money. He knew almost nothing about making beer, and it showed. Locals joked the Bavarian brewery's beer was so bad, customers sent it back. Enter Adolphus Busch. One of 21 children born to a German merchant family, he'd arrived in St. Louis with little more than ambition, working as a brewery supply salesman on the riverfront. In 1861, he married Anheuser's daughter, Lily, in a double wedding no less, where his brother married her sister. 3 years later, Adolphus joined the father-in-law's failing brewery. It was the best hire in the history of American beer. Busch understood something that no other brewer did. Beer didn't have to be local. He became the first American brewer to pasteurize beer so it could have survived long journeys. The first to build a fleet of refrigerated rail cars. The first to bottle at massive scale. In 1876, he launched a light, crisp, Bohemian-style lager named after the Czech brewing town of Budweiser. It wasn't designed to be St. Louis's beer, it was designed to be America's beer, the first truly national brand the industry had ever seen. What followed was a century of dominance. The company survived Prohibition by selling ice cream, near beer, brewer yeast, and when repeal came in 1933, it celebrated by hitching a team of Clydesdales to a beer wagon, a marketing icon that survives to this day. By the 1950s, Anheuser-Busch was the largest brewer on the planet. In 1982, it launched Bud Light, and by 2001, Bud Light was the best-selling beer in America. 5 generations of the Busch family ran a company for nearly 150 years, and then came 2008. InBev was a Belgian-Brazilian conglomerate not run by brewers, but by financiers, men who saw the beer the way the private equity sees everything, as costs to be cut. That summer, they launched an unsolicited bid for Anheuser-Busch, $46 billion, with a threat to replace the entire board if the family resisted. August Busch IV had promised the sale would never happen on his watch, and 5 months later it did. $52 billion at the time, the largest all-cash acquisition in history. America's most iconic brewer would now answer to Leuven, Belgium. And InBev kept buying. In 2013, they swallowed Grupo Modelo, Mexico's biggest brewer, for $21 billion. In 2016, they took SAB Miller for over $100 billion, one of the largest corporate mergers in human history. Today, AB InBev owns more than 400 brands: Corona, Stella Artois, Beck's, Michelob, roughly one of every 4 beers sold on Earth. But buried inside that buying spree was a time bomb. When AB InBev bought Modelo, American regulators forced them to sell Modelo's U.S. rights to a rival. So in 2023, when Bud Light fell, the beer can that took its crown, Modelo Especial, was a beer AB InBev owns everything else in the world except America. The empire had built its own replacement. And this kind of leads to, for me, the core of what this book about is, on the outside, and the author does a good job of saying this in the book, people sort of look at it as like, oh, the beer brand went woke, they went to this activist and they tanked their brand. All of that stuff started with this merger back in 2008 when AB InBev bought. And even then, as this book details, the Busch family, although they ran a successful beer business on the outside, and what I mean by that is it made a bunch of money. When you have a family business run by these types of people who didn't really earn anything, they just happened to have the last name Busch, you get a lot of chaos. And as the book details, several of these sons of the generations that end up owning the business ran it pretty poorly. Adolphus Busch, the fourth, was a partier. He was known as a partier. He wasn't really a good business guy. He just happened to be part of the clan, and he's running the business. And so there were always cracks in the business. It could have been way more successful, but it had tons of bloat. They used, like a lot of businesses, old legacy businesses, they used the business as like a family piggy bank. And so they would travel using family business cards. They would spend on their own personal affairs using the business. And essentially, the business had its own tab. It's like, imagine walking into a bar and saying, put it on my tab. That's kind of what that family did to Budweiser. And so it was run poorly anyway. AB InBev comes in to take it over, and when they do that, they're doing the private equity. Hey, we're not actually growing the business organically. We're just going to continue to acquire companies and cut costs. Well, at some point that dries up, and you can't just do that forever, especially at the scale they did. I mean, they get to 1 in 4 of all beers, right? And so enter in the late 20 teens, 2020 era of peak stakeholder capitalism and all this craziness with ESG, right? Environmental science governance thing that was spearheaded by BlackRock and Larry Fink. And you had all of these businesses now trying to claim that businesses should drive social causes. And that begins like the final nail in the coffin for Bud Light that leads to this video with Dylan Mulvaney. Because for years, they had been getting super focused on ESG and DEI, right? And trying to measure things based off of not merit any longer. And when you do that, you're going to start to get creep in the business, and you're going to start to get people in the business that are not actually about the business. They're about causes and activism. Now, I'm trying to kind of leave as much as my own opinion out of this as possible on this particular subject. But what I will say on this is that if you are someone who believes that businesses that are for profit in corporate America should be the ones spearheading social causes, I don't know. I almost feel bad for you. If you think that BlackRock has our best interests in mind, again, I just feel bad for you. It's a business, and they do it because they do things, whatever thing they do, whatever cause they get behind, because they think it can lead to more money. And this became something where, hey, company, in this example, AB InBev, right, Budweiser, they found out, hey, our money source, our revenues are drying up in our real business. Now we need to go promote these other causes to help generate brand awareness to get more people to buy our beers because we think it's all this circular logic. And if you're someone who believes that businesses have our best interest in mind, then I would say read a book like this. That's this kind of book that's for you. This ended up being a really good business book. It's not what I was expecting. I thought maybe disgruntled employee, but it's not. This guy is a smart guy, and he was inside the company at high levels for many years. It's really worth the read. So I'd recommend picking this one up. The last thing I'll say, I remember a friend of mine said this to me many years ago when it comes to causes like this. Anytime a cause, whether it's a social cause, ESG, whatever that is, they start off as a noble cause, then they become a business, and then they become a racket. And that's what happened with a lot of the stuff around this time. Is it a noble cause to hire people of different race, diversity, all that? Yes, that's a good idea, and we should all aspire to do more of that. Should it become a business where we're now measuring people off of that? Yeah, probably not. And then eventually it becomes a racket where we start accusing people who aren't doing it of being racist. So this is a good book, The Last Call for Bud Light. I recommend reading it. Thanks for watching.